Hey there. Tonight we're going to wander back into a quieter, stranger world. A world where your day doesn't begin at sunrise, but in the middle of the night. So, before we drift there together, settle yourself in, perhaps dim the lights, and if you enjoy these calm meanderings through history, you might like to subscribe. Only if it feels right. Now, close your eyes and let the bells sound in your imagination. You wake with a start. The air is cool, the sort of chill that seeps through your robe and lingers at your bones, as though the building itself prefers to hold the night close. You take your place among the brothers, lined neatly like worn chess pieces. Each robe is the same dull wool, each hood pulled low, and yet somehow you feel conspicuously visible, as if your yawning alone might be recorded in the heavenly ledger. Candles sputter at the altar, dripping wax that hardens into pale stalactites. A droplet lands on your sleeve. You try not to flinch. You try to look devout. You mostly succeed at looking tired. The chanting begins, long Latin syllables unfurling into the stillness. You mouth the words, though truth be told, you don't understand half of them. Few do. Not fluently. But rhythm is its own kind of meaning, and soon the voices rise together, weaving a slow tapestry of sound. It's oddly hypnotic, like the world's most ancient lullaby, which would be helpful, except the whole point is to stay awake. A reality check. Monks were expected to attend every hour of the divine office, which means even in the deep dark you're here chanting psalms with as much energy as your sleepy lungs will allow. Miss enough prayers, and you might be sent to penance. Bread and water. Or worse, public scolding in front of your peers. You think to yourself, suddenly, that a warm bed seems a softer punishment. The smoke from the candles is persistent. It clings to your throat, and you cough once, earning a sideways glance. The taste is bitter, a mixture of tallow and burnt wick. You find yourself wondering how lungs survived decades of this, then quietly remember that life expectancy wasn't exactly generous here. No wonder the Psalms dwell so often on eternity. Your eyes wander, though you try to keep them lowered. The carved wooden choir stalls curve around you, their edges smoothed by centuries of elbows, knees, and drowsy foreheads. In the corner, a carved face peeks from the wood, a grotesque little figure with bulging eyes and a tongue stuck out. You wonder briefly if that monk artist was as bored as you are now. The chanting drifts on. The rhythm rocks you gently like the tide tugging a moored boat. Your head dips once, then twice. You snap it upright quickly, because nothing feels worse than nodding off in the middle of worship, especially when you know Brother Stephen is watching from 3 seats away. He delights in catching mistakes. You rub your eyes, the wool of your sleeve coarse against your skin. You breathe deep and try to focus. But the words, repetitive and solemn, circle back again and again, blurring at the edges of your mind. They were designed for devotion, yes, but they could also double as the world's earliest sleep aid. A peculiar thought slides into your head. Is nodding off during prayer a venial sin? Does heaven truly keep count of half-muttered syllables, of yawns muffled behind sleeves? You decide not to ask aloud. Better to chant along and hope grace covers drowsiness. Finally, the psalm concludes. The voices fade into a hush, and the only sound is the faint scratch of sandals shifting on stone. The prior raises his hand in blessing, and the candles flutter as though relieved that the ordeal is done. You bow with the others, grateful that at least for now the test of endurance is paused. Soon, you will return to your cell. Not for long, of course, just enough time to collapse back onto the straw, to lie awake in the half-dark, listening to the snores and the rustle of restless bodies, wondering if this segmented sleep ever truly refreshes anyone. And so, with your robe smelling faintly of candle smoke and your eyelids heavy, you shuffle back to your cell, where the straw sack awaits its reluctant tenant once more. You return to your cell, the chanting still ringing faintly in your ears. Dot. The stone corridor is dark again. The candlelight left behind in the chapel. Dot. Your feet know the path by habit, toes brushing the worn grooves in the floor where countless monks have walked before. The silence here feels different, thicker, more private, as though the monastery itself has closed its eyes. Dot. You slip back onto your straw pallet. Dot. It greets you with the same lumpy indifference as before, crackling softly under your weight like brittle twigs. Dot. The smell rises immediately, dry hay mingled with something a little damp, a little sour, a reminder that straw is not eternal, and neither are the sacks that hold it. A bell is clanging somewhere in the dark, its iron tongue echoing down stone corridors. It's not dawn. Dot. It isn't even near dawn. Dot. It is the kind of hour when your body insists you should still be curled in sleep, but here in the monastery the day begins around 2 or 3 in the morning. Dot. You push yourself up from your straw mattress. Dot. The sack beneath you is lumpy and not entirely trustworthy. Still, you draw the rough blanket over your shoulders, and the warmth is just enough to coax your eyes closed. Dot. This is the second sleep, a curious feature of medieval life. Dot. People often slept in 2 shifts, the hours between broken by prayer, quiet conversation, or simply lying awake. Dot. Scholars centuries later would give it grand names: segmented rest, biphasic rhythm. Dot. To you, it feels more like unhelpful interruption. But here it is custom, and custom rarely negotiates. You lie there, waiting for slumber to return. Dot. It doesn't hurry. Dot. Instead, you hear your neighbor snoring, a rolling, heroic sound that suggests a battle fought entirely in his nose. Dot. On the other side, someone shifts restlessly, straw squeaking, as though the entire dormitory is a poorly tuned orchestra of tired men. Dot. You pull the blanket tighter, but it does little to soften the soundtrack. A peculiar tickle brushes your ankle. Dot. You know instantly what it is. The straw has other residents, small, nimble ones, that scurry and leap with enviable energy. Dot. You slap gently at your leg, more for peace of mind than actual eviction. It's not that medieval monks welcomed fleas, it's that they accepted them as part of life, the way you accept rain clouds or taxes. Dot. You try shifting position, hoping for comfort. Dot. The pallet dips unevenly, one side sagging where the straw has been crushed flat. Your back protests, your shoulder blades pressing against coarse fabric and harder floor beneath. Dot. You breathe slowly, telling yourself that monks valued hardship, that discomfort was a tool to sharpen the soul. A fine sentiment, though your aching hip bone disagrees. Dot. The air in the cell is still. Dot. There is no glass in the window, only a shutter, and a thread of night breeze creeps in through the gaps. It carries the faint, earthy smell of damp soil, the residue of yesterday's rain clinging to the courtyard outside. It's cool, almost refreshing, until it brushes your toes, and you realize your blanket is shorter than your body. Dot. You curl up, resigned. Dot. Your mind wanders. Dot. Not to visions of heavenly reward, but to the thought of a soft feather mattress, an impossible luxury in this world. Dot. You imagine sinking into it, no fleas, no lumps, no cold stone beneath. The picture lingers just long enough to make the straw beneath you feel even crueler. Dot. You sigh, gently, so as not to wake anyone. Dot. Time passes strangely in these hours. Dot. Minutes feel like long stretches. Yet when you close your eyes and open them again, the chapel bell may already be preparing its next call. Dot. You drift in and out, half dreaming, half listening, floating between wakefulness and the edge of another prayer. Dot. Eventually, though, sleep comes back to you. It doesn't last long, just enough to taste the sweetness of forgetting the cold and the straw. Dot. But when the next bell rings, sharp and unyielding as before, you will rise again, dot. This time, not for chanting, but for the simplest of comforts, the morning meal, dot. And so, with your eyelids heavy and your stomach beginning to whisper, you prepare to shuffle toward breakfast, a humble meal of bread and watered ale that waits to greet you. You rise once more, this time lured not by duty, but by the distant promise of food, dot. Your body feels sluggish, heavy with interrupted rest, yet your stomach is insistent, reminding you that monks did not eat often, and what they did eat was rarely indulgent, dot still comma. Even a crust of bread can feel like a feast when the night has been long, dot. The refectory is quiet when you enter, its long wooden tables waiting like ships moored side by side. Candles sputter faintly, giving off a thin haze of smoke that lingers near the rafters, dot. The benches creak as you settle onto one, the wood polished smooth by generations of elbows and robes, dot. Your eyes follow the shadows on the walls, patterns thrown by candlelight that seem almost alive in the wavering gloom. A brother ladles out the first sustenance of the day, dot. It is bread, coarse and dark, dense enough to double as a doorstop. You break a piece and find crumbs scattering like gravel onto the table, dot. The taste is sharp with barley, rough on the tongue, and you recall that bits of grit from the millstones often found their way into the dough, dot. Good for wearing down your teeth, if not your hunger, dot. Beside the bread is beer, dot. Yes, beer, though hardly the sort you'd picture, dot. This is small ale, thin and weak, closer to flavored water than anything that might inspire song. The straw rustles, dry and scratchy against your skin, and you remember, with a small shiver, that you're not the only thing calling it home. Dot. Fleas are common companions here, and though they don't pay rent, they make themselves very comfortable, dot. You grope in the dimness, dot. The air smells faintly of wool from the rough blanket, mixed with the musty sweetness of straw and something older, less definable, perhaps the lingering smoke of last night's candles. It is safer to drink than most wells, which explains why even at breakfast a monk might sip it without shame, dot. You lift the wooden cup, take a swallow, and discover it is lukewarm. Refreshing is not the word you'd choose, dot. The smell in the hall is earthy and faintly sour, bread crust mingled with the yeast of ale, and beneath it all the tang of damp wool robes, dot. It is not unpleasant. Exactly, dot. It is simply monastic, a scent that clings, reminding you where you are, and that you are unlikely to encounter cinnamon rolls anytime soon. Dot. Silence rules here. Dot. As you chew, you listen to the sounds of the meal instead, the steady crunch of bread, the quiet gulp of ale, the occasional cough politely stifled into a sleeve. Dot. One brother reads aloud from Scripture, his voice measured, never hurried, the words rising above the soft chorus of mastication. Dot. It is less a breakfast than a slow, edible sermon. A curious thought drifts across your mind. How many mornings like this stretch ahead? Day after day of bread, ale, and reading. Without butter, without fruit, without change, dot. You realize that medieval monks must have built their patience not only in prayer, but at the dining table too, dot. The bread fills you, though only just, dot. Your jaw aches from chewing, and you imagine what it would be like to taste something softer. A slice of cheese, perhaps, or even a fresh egg. But the rule is the rule, and simplicity is considered a virtue, dot. So you swallow the last of the ale, its yeasty tang lingering, and set down the cup, dot. The bell will sound soon again, dot, this time, not for chapel, but for the scriptorium, the workshop of words, where parchment waits and quills are sharpened, dot. Your fingers flex in anticipation, though they already ache in sympathy for the work ahead. And so, with the taste of coarse bread still in your mouth and the faint warmth of ale in your belly, you prepare to step into the scriptorium, where silence takes on a different weight and the long labor of copying begins. Somewhere nearby, a fellow brother clears his throat in his sleep, while another lets out a sigh that suggests he is already dreaming of breakfast. You stand, feet finding the chill of the stone floor. Dot. There are no slippers, just your calloused soles meeting the cold directly. Dot. You pull your robe tighter. Dot. The wool is coarse, the sort of cloth that makes you wonder whether comfort was a concept invented centuries later. Dot. Still, comma. It traps enough warmth to coax you into moving forward. The bell continues its call, deep and steady. Dot. You think to yourself that no modern alarm clock has ever been so insistent. Dot. And at least, unlike your bedside phone, well, you have no bedside phone, there's no snooze button to tempt you. Dot. You either rise or you face the disapproving stare of the prior, and that stare alone is sharper than the night air. Dot. As you shuffle toward the chapel with the others, you catch sight of pale candlelight spilling from doorways. It flickers across the damp stone walls, casting long shadows that sway like cloaked figures of their own. Dot. The scent of tallow smoke lingers in the passage, a reminder that here, light is a luxury, carefully rationed. Dot. Your stomach murmurs faintly, not yet aware that food is still hours away. Dot. You rub your arms, thinking that this schedule would never pass a modern wellness test. 8 hours of sleep? Balanced diet? Here, you count yourself lucky if your straw sack doesn't poke through your tunic. And yet, there's something curious in the moment. Dot. The silence between the bells is profound, the kind of stillness that makes you aware of every breath, every shuffle of cloth, every creak of wood beneath your feet. Dot. It is inconvenient, yes, and undeniably cold, but it is also strangely peaceful. Dot. You join the quiet procession, your mind still heavy with sleep. And as you step closer to the chapel door, the chanting within begins to reach your ears. Low, steady voices rising and falling like waves in the dark. Dot. Soon, comma, you'll add your own uncertain notes to the tide. Dot. For now, though, you simply move forward, out of your cell, away from the straw and its six-legged tenants, into the echoing halls where prayer waits. Dot. And as the candlelight steadies before you, you realize the night has only just begun. And so, with the cold stone beneath your feet and the chant pulling you onward, you shuffle toward the chapel, where the real test of staying awake is about to begin. You shuffle into the chapel, still half-dash asleep. Dot. The stone arches loom above you, their curves barely visible in the faint candlelight. Dot. Every step echoes crisp against the flagstones until it blends into the gentle murmur of voices already at prayer. You step into the scriptorium, the very heart of the monastery's labor. Dot. The room is long and narrow, lined with wooden desks facing high windows. Dot. Light filters in faintly, stretched and diluted by the cloudy glass, never quite enough to brighten the shadows clinging in corners. Dot. Candles stand ready, their wax hardened into strange dribbles, but daylight is precious, and so you squint at the parchment before you. Dot. You take your place at a desk worn smooth by decades of elbows. The feather yields in tiny curls, pale slivers that fall silently onto the desk. Dot. Each slice must be steady, measured, too much, and you ruin the tool. Dot. Too little, and the ink still runs like a clumsy stream. Dot. It is peculiar to think that every holy page depends not only on prayer, but on your ability to shave a goose feather with the precision of a surgeon. Dot. You pause to blow away the feather dust. Dot. It drifts lightly, caught in the faint draft from the window. For a moment it looks like snow, a small flurry vanishing into the shadows. Dot. Your eyes blur slightly, and you rub at them, realizing that the dimness of the room is already taking its toll. Dot. No glasses, no optician, just the stubborn insistence of weary eyes. Dot. The ache in your wrist returns when you take up the quill again. Dot. It is a dull throb now, spreading into your hand. Dot. You flex your fingers, but the stiffness clings like a guest who refuses to leave. In truth, scribes often suffered from cramped hands, a kind of occupational hazard. Dot. And unlike modern workers, no one offered them ergonomic chairs or soothing ointments. The knife itself is a curious friend. It sharpens the quill, yes, but it also serves to scrape away mistakes on parchment. You know this well because earlier you blotted a line, and the faint scar of your correction still gleams on the page. It is oddly comforting to know that even monks had erasers, though theirs were sharp and risky. Your thoughts wander as you cut, and you notice how close your hand rests to the blade. A slip could mean a nick, and a nick could mean infection. In a world where even small wounds might fester, the scriptorium is not without danger. You grip more firmly, steadying yourself, as though a quiet psalm might hover invisibly at your side. A reality check slides into your mind. All this labor, this careful carving and scratching, produces perhaps a single finished page at day's end. One page. The weight of eternity resting on one small square of parchment, inked by hands that itch and eyes that blur. You wonder for a fleeting moment if the saints in heaven ever roll their eyes at such slow devotion. But when the nib is right again, when the lines flow clean and dark, you feel a small triumph. The letters march steady once more, their edges sharp, their strokes proud. It is a victory measured not in applause, but in the quiet satisfaction of neatness. Around you, the other brothers continue their rhythm. The soft symphony of quills scratches the silence. Now and then you hear a faint clink as someone lays down a knife, or the muffled sigh of a monk rolling sore shoulders. It is work that binds you together, shared labor in shared stillness. Your stomach rumbles softly, a reminder that the midday meal grows nearer. For now, you ignore it, pressing on with ink and feather, knowing that soon the bell will call you away. Not to freedom, exactly, but at least to stew, and perhaps to the odd blessing of a warm spoonful. And so, with your quill newly sharpened and your thoughts drifting toward food, you brace yourself for the next bell, the one that calls you to midday prayer and the humble pottage that waits beyond. The bell tolls again, low and steady, drawing you out of the scriptorium. You set the quill down, flex your stiff fingers, and follow the line of brothers toward the chapel once more. The rhythm of the day is measured not by clocks, but by bells, and this one signals the great pause. Prayers at midday. Your legs protest the rise from the wooden bench, and your stomach reminds you that prayer is always easier on a full belly. The chapel is brighter now. Daylight filters through narrow windows, slanting into long golden beams that catch the dust hanging in the air. The candles are still lit, their smoke mixing with the smell of stone warmed faintly by the sun. The voices begin again, the same familiar cadence, a chant rolling across the room like the tide. You join in, the Latin syllables leaving your lips with slow inevitability, even as your mind drifts toward the meal waiting afterward. A reality check. Missing these prayers was not an option. The rule was clear. Every monk must attend the hours of the divine office. And though your thoughts may wander, your body must still be present, your voice humming with the choir. Slip away and you risk penance, which is less inspiring than it sounds when it involves bread, water, and public humiliation. The chant continues, circling back on itself in a steady loop. The wood bears tiny grooves where blades have sharpened quills, and faint ink stains that no scrubbing ever truly erased. A goose feather lies ready in your hand, the humble quill, trimmed and slit, to hold just enough ink for a careful stroke. Beside it rests a small knife, its edge waiting to pare the nib back into shape when it dulls. Tools simple in appearance, yet demanding in patience. The parchment before you is animal skin, scraped and stretched thin. The repetition is hypnotic, the sound weaving around your hunger until the two blur together. You notice a brother swaying slightly on his feet, eyes half closed in devotion or exhaustion, perhaps both dot. You envy him for the courage to drift so close to sleep, under the watchful eye of the prior dot. At last, the prayer draws to a close dot. You bow with the others, then shuffle out toward the refectory. The scent of food drifts faintly through the hall, a humble fragrance. But to your empty stomach, it might as well be roasted feast. Wooden bowls wait at long tables, their earthen smell mixing with the sharp tang of smoke from the hearth. Today's meal is pottage. It is nearly always pottage, a stew of grains, beans, and whatever vegetables happen to be available. The ladle dips, the thick broth slops into your bowl, and steam curls upward, carrying the scent of leeks, and maybe, just maybe, a scrap of meat. You lower your head in blessing, though the real prayer is for it to be warm. You lift the spoon. The stew is thin, yet it carries a comfort in its heat. It slides down, earthy and filling enough to quiet your stomach, though you can't help wondering if the carrots have been recycled from yesterday. Your spoon scrapes the bottom quickly, because portions are modest, and the monks believe appetite should never grow too bold. There's bread too, always bread. Another slice of dense, chewy loaf, its crust tough enough to exercise your jaw. You dip it into the pottage, softening it slightly, and thank Providence that Brother Thomas, seated across from you, turns his head just in time to sneeze away from the communal pot. A peculiar blessing, but a blessing nonetheless. The hall remains silent, save for the sound of spoons and the low murmur of the reader. Scripture again. Read in steady cadence, so that even as you eat you are reminded of higher thoughts. You wonder if the words seep in while you chew, or if they float past, lost among the steam rising from your bowl. Either way, the rhythm of reading and eating is oddly calming. When the meal is done, you sit back, your hunger quieted, though never quite gone. The benches creak as brothers rise, bowls gathered and stacked, the smell of warm broth fading into the background once more. Soon, the next duty calls, and it is one you'd rather avoid, but cannot. The trip to the latrine. And so, with your stomach settled and the peculiar comfort of warm pottage lingering, you steel yourself for the next part of monastic life, a visit to the privy, where the reality of medieval hygiene awaits with all its odorous honesty. You follow the narrow corridor that leads away from the warmth of the refectory. The air grows cooler with each step, and a faint, unmistakable smell begins to announce your destination. The monastery latrines were often set apart, sometimes perched over running water channels to whisk waste away. A clever system, in theory. In practice, the fragrance had a way of lingering. You enter the chamber and immediately regret inhaling. The scent is thick, earthy, and sour, like a stew that has outstayed its welcome by several centuries. The draft from an open slit in the wall helps a little, but mostly it stirs the smell around rather than carrying it off. You take a shallow breath and decide not to linger longer than necessary. The seats are carved wood, arranged in a row along a long bench. No partitions, no privacy, just a communal arrangement, as if conversation might somehow make the experience less unpleasant. You sit gingerly, the wood cold against you, and think that solitude would be preferable to this brotherly togetherness. A curious fact drifts into your mind. Some monastic rules advised reading while at the latrine, the idea being that spiritual attention should never waver. You glance at the dimness around you, the damp stone, the smell, and wonder how anyone could concentrate on the Psalms in this environment. Perhaps endurance itself was the holy lesson. Beneath you, the sound of running water whispers faintly. It trickles away through channels cut into stone, a marvel of medieval plumbing in its way. Yet the draft that rises with it is chilly, particularly in winter, when the seat itself feels like a slab of ice. That you shift, your robe offering little insulation, and decide that sanctity must surely excuse a quick visit, a reality check. Soap was scarce. It smells faintly of its origin, a leathery tang softened by chalk and lime dot. You run your hand across it and feel the uneven grain, the faint ridges left by the scraping knife. A reminder that books here do not grow on trees, at least not directly yet. Each key is the product of life, death, and hours of preparation. You dip the quill into ink, a black mixture brewed from oak galls and iron salts. When you finish, you wash your hands in a basin of cold water, perhaps scented faintly with herbs, if the cellarer was generous. The water is clear but biting, nipping at your fingers until they turn red. You rub them briskly, drying on your robe, because towels are a luxury reserved for kings, not scribes. You leave quickly, breathing deep the fresher air of the corridor. It tastes almost sweet in comparison, though in truth it is still heavy with a damp scent of stone and wax. The experience leaves you thoughtful. Hygiene, you realize, was not neglected, but it was a battle fought with the simplest of tools. The latrine behind you fades into silence. Ahead waits the scriptorium once again, the parchment still expecting your hand, the quill still thirsting for ink. Your stomach is steadier, your body lighter, and though the memory of the smell lingers, you press on toward your desk, ready for the next stage of the day. And so, with your hands still tingling from cold water and your thoughts wandering to quills and pigments, you return to the scriptorium, this time to practice the peculiar art of illumination, where letters bloom into colors drawn from minerals, plants, and insects. You sit again at your desk in the scriptorium, but this time the work feels different. The steady rows of black letters give way to something brighter, something meant to delight the eye as well as preserve the word. It is illumination, the curious practice of decorating text with color, a task as sacred as it is painstaking. On the bench before you rests a tray of pigments. The colors are small heaps of powder, each one ground from peculiar sources. A deep blue from lapis lazuli, brought all the way from Afghanistan. A brilliant red from crushed insects called cochineal, greens from copper salts, yellows from saffron, and the shining gold that comes in the form of delicate leaf, so thin it trembles at the slightest breath. Each hue is precious, a reminder that books here are as much treasure as text. You mix the powders with water and egg white, creating paints that cling to your brush. The smell is faintly sour, a blend of minerals and kitchen leftovers. The texture is gritty, grains of stone that scrape against the bristles. It is strange to think you are decorating holy words with the dust of the earth, yet that is exactly what illumination is. Earth and heaven sharing a page. The first stroke is slow, curling around a capital letter. The pigment spreads unevenly, soaks into the parchment as if the skin drinks it. You guide it carefully, aware that one slip cannot be erased with a knife the way ink can. Illumination is permanent, and so every tremor of your hand is a decision for centuries. A reality check. Many of these pigments are toxic. That brilliant green, copper, ready to poison if ingested. The glowing red, mercury compounds, eager to sicken. The shimmer of gold, harmless perhaps, but glued down with substances that reek in the making. You breathe shallowly and think that beauty comes at a peculiar cost. The work continues, hour after hour. A curl of gold here, a flourish of red there. Tiny flowers in the margins, their petals unfolding beneath your brush. A rabbit appears, crouching among vines. Perhaps it is whimsical, perhaps symbolic, or perhaps you are simply weary and in need of amusement. Scribes were known to slip odd creatures into the corners, half for art, half for secret jest. The light shifts slowly across the scriptorium floor. Dot. Dust dances in the sunbeams, settling on parchment, mixing with the smell of pigments, ink, and wool. Dot. Your eyes blur as you lean close, the tiny lines demanding focus. The letters and images shimmer until you are not sure whether you see them clearly or dream them. A peculiar warmth spreads through you. Dot. Despite the strain, despite the fumes, there is a joy in color. Dot. The page comes alive beneath your hands. Dot. What was once plain words now glitters with life, a celebration of beauty in a world often gray and cold. Dot. And though your back aches and your head pounds faintly, you cannot help but smile at the way gold catches the light. Still, the work is endless, and your stomach begins to murmur again. Dot. The bell will call you soon, not to pigment and parchment, but back to the chapel for prayer, and to the quiet rumors that pass among the brothers. Rumors of mistakes, of punishments, and of the odd nap caught at the wrong hour. The liquid clings to the nib, threatening at any moment to drip too fast, to smear across the holy page. Dot. You steady your hand, breath shallow, and draw the first slow line of a letter. Dot. It is steady, it is precise. Dot. And it takes every ounce of focus you possess. A reality check. A skilled scribe might labor all day for a single page. Dot. No shortcuts, no copying machines. And so, with paint still wet on your brush and gold leaf clinging to your fingertips, you set the page aside, ready to shuffle once again to the chapel, where whispers of discipline and weary monks drift through the air like candle smoke. Dot. You rise from your desk, eyes still dazzled by flecks of gold. Dot. The pigments cling faintly to your fingertips, a smear of red here, a streak of green there, as though the page has left its mark upon you. Dot. The bell calls again, summoning you back to prayer, and so you shuffle once more toward the chapel, your body stiff, your thoughts still buzzing with color. The air inside is cooler than before. Dot candles gutter in their holders, their smoke curling upward into the vaulting shadows. Dot. The familiar rhythm begins. Chant, response, chant, again. Dot. You join in, though your voice is hoarse from the morning's effort. Dot. Your throat scratches, and the smell of wax and smoke makes you cough softly into your sleeve. It is here, in the hush between psalms, that you notice a ripple moving through the rows of brothers. A whisper, carefully hidden, but traveling nonetheless. Brother John, it seems, was caught napping at matins. The story trickles from ear to ear, gaining tiny embellishments with each telling. Some say he nodded so deeply his forehead smacked the wood. Others say he drooled onto the psalter. Either way, the result is the same: punishment. Discipline in a monastery is rarely cruel, but it is always humbling. For sleeping in prayer, John may be denied supper or made to sit apart, or assigned extra labor in the gardens. Public shame is as effective here as the lash elsewhere. You think to yourself, better sore knees from kneeling than the burning eyes of humiliation. Your own eyelids grow heavy as the chant drones on. The Latin phrases blur into one another, a tide that rises and falls, steady and soporific. You pinch your sleeve discreetly, a little shock of rough wool against your fingertips, a reminder that you must not join John in his disgrace. You breathe deep, straighten your spine, and fix your eyes on the flicker of a candle. It dances, hypnotic, but at least it keeps you awake. A reality check. These prayers occur 7 times a day, and each is mandatory. There is no skipping, no excuse of fatigue, no "I'll catch up later." The bells ring and you obey. It is discipline by sound, a life lived at the mercy of iron and echo. And in moments like this, you wonder whether eternity requires quite so much punctuality. The chant ends, leaving silence that feels heavy and long. The prior gives a blessing, his hand raised, his face unreadable in the shifting candlelight. You bow with the others, the movement stiff, Your knees creaking in quiet complaint, dot, you stand again, and the line of brothers begins to move toward the refectory once more. Evening approaches, dot. You can feel it in the way the air cools, in the long shadows stretching across the cloister, dot. Your stomach murmurs again, not loudly, but with the persistence of one who knows bread is coming. Dot, bread, comma, cheese, perhaps. Maybe a ladle of porridge, dot. Nothing to surprise, but something to sustain, dot. As you leave the chapel, the whispers of Brother John's punishment linger behind, dot. You are grateful it is not your own name that carries, dot. Better to endure hunger than gossip. You step into the fading light of the cloister, smelling the chill air of evening, and follow the others towards supper, dot. And so, with your throat dry from chanting and your stomach quietly hopeful, you prepare to sit once more at the long wooden table, where the evening meal waits, as predictable and as humbling as the one before. Each curl of each letter must be shaped by hand, each word aligned with the margin, each mistake a blot that ruins hours of devotion, dot. And you, fumbling here at the dawn of your practice, are a walking disaster waiting to happen. Dot, the silence of the room is dense. Dot, quills scratch softly. The faintest sound of progress multiplied by many desks, dot. Every so often, someone clears a throat, or the scrape of a chair leg disturbs the hush, dot. But there is no chatter, no idle word. The rule forbids it, and besides, ink is treacherous when distracted. Dot. Your eyes begin to blur, dot. The letters march in endless lines, black soldiers on pale skin, and you blink to steady them, dot. You imagine for a moment what would happen if you sneezed. Dot, one eruption, and a page of scripture might be baptized in an accidental ink storm. Dot, you grip your quill tighter, half in prayer, half in terror. The hours stretch long, dot. Your wrist begins to ache, a slow throb that works its way into your forearm. You shift slightly, but the bench is hard and unyielding. Dot. The wool robe scratches at your neck. Dot. The air smells of ink, wax, and the faint tang of skin, warmed parchment. Dot. It is not unpleasant, but it is not inspiring either, dot. And yet, despite all this, there is a rhythm that soothes, dot. Dip the quill, dot. Shape the letter, dot. Draw the line, dot. Pause to breathe, dot, again, comma. And again, until the page fills with careful rows, dot. Time dissolves, measured not in minutes but in words. But soon your nib dulls, your lines grow faint, and the knife beside you calls for use. Dot. It is a delicate task, one that sharpens both quill and concentration, dot. You sigh, softly, knowing that the next stage of your day involves more scraping, more patience, and more ways to slice your finger than you would prefer, dot. And so, with your wrist stiff and your quill faltering, you prepare to take up the small knife to sharpen once again and coax your tool back into obedience. You pause, setting the quill aside, and reach for the little knife, dot. It is small, almost toy-like, yet more essential than it appears. Dot, without it, a quill quickly turns blunt, its strokes feathering into messy lines. Dot, with it, you can coax the nib back into a sharp, obedient point. Dot, you hold it carefully, blade catching the dim light, and remind yourself that monks were not just scribes but quiet craftsmen too. Dot. The sharpening begins with gentle scraping. You file into the refectory again, the benches groaning softly beneath the weight of tired monks, dot. The air is cooler now, evening shadows stretching across the long wooden tables. Dot, candles flicker along the walls, their flames throwing uneven light that paints the faces around you, in amber and shadow, hot. It is supper time, though supper may be a generous word for what awaits, dot. The bowls are set, plain and earthen, each with its own small portion of bread. You splash your face, the droplets running down your cheeks. Dot. The sensation is bracing, almost painful. Dot. It wakes you, though not in a pleasant way. Dot. The water drips into your robe, dampening the wool so that it clings cold against your chest. Dot. You grimace softly, reminding yourself that discomfort is part of discipline. Dot. Or so the rule insists. A curious detail lingers in your thoughts. Monks did not bathe often, sometimes only a handful of times a year. Bathing was viewed with suspicion. Too indulgent, too sensual. Dot. Better, they thought, to endure the odor than risk the vanity of clean skin. Dot. And so, the basin must serve in place of a bath, a gesture of hygiene rather than a transformation. Dot. You glance at the brother beside you. Booed you. Dot. He rubs his hands briskly, then dries them on his robe without hesitation. Dot. It is the common way. Wool is as good as any towel, and besides, no one here expects spotless garments. You follow suit, patting at your sleeves, and wonder if the robe itself will ever lose its damp chill. Dot. The smell of the place is faint but peculiar. Dot. Water mingled with stone, the musk of wool robes that rarely see a full wash. Dot. It is not offensive, not exactly, just the scent of humanity folded into stone corridors. Dot. You breathe it in, accepting it as part of the monastery's fabric. A reality check surfaces. Modern minds dream of soap, of hot baths, of fresh linen. Here, you have none of those. Here, you are reminded daily that cleanliness is less a luxury and more a fragile balance. Cold water, coarse wool, and the hope that prayers cover what scrubbing cannot. When the ritual is done, you feel not refreshed, but reset, a little sharper, a little more awake, though your skin prickles with lingering cold. The basin gurgles behind you, its sound fading as you step back toward the cloister. Evening is deepening. Candles will be lit again, and the final prayers of the day are drawing near. The chapel waits once more, its air thick with smoke and chant, its benches ready for weary knees. And though your body longs for rest, the bells will insist upon devotion first. And so, with damp hands and a robe that smells faintly of wool and water, you make your way toward Compline, the last service of the night, where fatigue and faith mingle in equal measure. You shuffle back into the chapel, this time for Compline, the last prayer of the day. The candles burn lower now, their wax dripping into uneven pools that cling to the holders like frozen tears. The air is dense with smoke, a haze that blurs the edges of the stone arches above. It smells of tallow and soot, and beneath that the faint musk of robes long worn and rarely washed. You kneel with the others, knees pressing into the hard stone floor. It is cold, always cold, and you shift slightly to ease the sting. Your voice joins the chant, slower now, softer, as though the words themselves are drowsy. The rhythm rocks you gently, a lullaby disguised as devotion. Your throat rasps from a day of chanting. Each syllable catches faintly, scraping out of you like a rusty hinge. You wonder how monks endured decades of this, their voices rising and falling 7 times a day. Perhaps they grew used to it, or perhaps every monk carried the same quiet ache you feel now. In the corner of your eye, you notice a moth fluttering dangerously close to the altar. It circles the candle, drawn to the flame with desperate determination. You hold your breath as it swoops closer, imagining it landing on the sacred manuscript spread open nearby. A single flutter of wings could smear ink, or worse, burn in the candle and tumble onto parchment. A curious, small danger, yet one every scribe knows too well. You stifle a yawn, covering your mouth with your sleeve. Fatigue presses down like a cloak. The words slip from your lips more slowly, and your eyes threaten to close. You think of Brother John, punished for his nap, and force yourself upright, back rigid, hands folded neatly. Better sore muscles than humiliation. A reality check. These prayers stretch late, long after the body insists on sleep. The monks believed vigilance in prayer sharpened the soul, but to you, it feels more like a test of survival. Every candle flicker, every cough, every shuffle of sandals seems louder now, pulling you back from the edge of slumber. At last, the chanting fades. The final blessing is given, the prior's hand raised in solemn benediction. The brothers bow, then rise as one. The scrape of benches loud in the hush. The service ends, not with applause, but with weary silence. You break your slice and already know the taste. Coarse, dense, unyielding. It is the same loaf as morning, and the morning before, that. You chew slowly, your jaw working as though on some test of endurance. You imagine that if bread could speak, this one would scold you for daring to expect variety. Beside the bread sits cheese, a small wedge with a tang that hovers between sharp and sour. It smells faintly of the cellar where it was stored, cool and damp, like stone that has learned to sweat. You step into the cloister again, the night air cool against your face. The sky is dark, stars scattered faintly above the shadow of the walls. You breathe deep, and the air tastes cleaner here, untouched by candle smoke. It is a small mercy before you return to your cell. Your feet carry you back down the familiar corridor, toward the waiting straw mattress, toward the rough wool blanket, toward the final rest of the day. The thought of lying down again fills you with relief. Whatever discomfort awaits, it is better than stone floors and endless chanting. And so, with your body aching from kneeling and your voice hoarse from psalms, you return to your cell, where the night's last ritual is not prayer, but the simple act of lying down to sleep. You make your way toward the washing basin, tucked in a corner where stone meets stone. The corridor is cool, the walls breathing out the day's stored chill. You can already hear the faint trickle of water, a sound that promises refreshment but rarely delivers comfort. The basin itself is simple, a carved trough of stone with a narrow stream flowing in. The water is clear but startlingly cold, drawn from a spring that never knew the courtesy of warming. You dip your hands in, and the chill bites instantly, sending little shocks racing up your arms. The kind of cold that persuades you to rethink just how dirty your hands truly are. You rub your palms together briskly. The rough skin of your fingers rasp against one another, the water catching in the lines and freezing them into numbness. There is no soap here. Not the fragrant lathering sort you might wish for. At best, some monasteries allowed herbs like rosemary or sage to be steeped in the water, but today the basin is plain, and your only ally is friction. A reality check. Bathing, in the full sense of the word, is rare here. Once or twice a year, perhaps, if the prior is feeling generous. More often, it is limited to this: quick rinses of hands and face, as much ritual as hygiene. You splash your cheeks, and the droplets sting, sliding down into your robe where the wool greedily soaks them up. Now you are both clean and damp, a combination few people envy. The air around the basin carries a peculiar scent. Stone dampness, the faint moss that creeps in cracks, and the musk of wool that never fully dries. It is not unpleasant, but it reminds you that freshness is always temporary in such walls. Brother Matthew's mystery rash comes to mind, a blotchy red irritation that made him scratch through prayers. Some say it was a punishment from heaven. Others suspect it was the result of skipping this basin too many times. You glance at the brother beside you. He plunges his hands into the water without flinching. scrubs them against his robe, and steps away without a second thought. It strikes you that his robe may now be dirtier than his hands. But in the monastery, wool is as good as a towel. You follow suit, pressing the damp fabric against your palms, the coarse fibers scratching faintly as they draw away the water. Your mind wanders to soap again. Existed, of course, a rough mixture of animal fat and ash, sometimes scented with herbs if luck allowed. But it was expensive and far from common in daily routines. You imagine the comfort of a lather, the slip of bubbles carrying away dirt. And then you return to reality, the cold water, the scratch of wool, and the faint smell of sheep clinging to your sleeves. The basin gurgles quietly behind you, a steady rhythm, like the monastery's own heartbeat. You flex your fingers, still tingling from the cold. You tell yourself you feel cleaner, though in truth you feel mostly chilled. But perhaps that is the point, to remind you that life here is not about ease, but about endurance. You step away from the washing place, the water dripping onto the stone floor as you walk. The corridor stretches ahead, lit by the fading glow of candles set into the walls. Shadows lengthen as night deepens, and the next bell waits to summon you. Soon you will kneel once more, your voice rising in chant for the last time today. And so, with damp hands and wool sleeves heavy with water, you make your way back toward the chapel, where Compline, the final prayer of the night, awaits your weary body and your stubbornly drowsy eyes. You return to the chapel once more, this time for Compline, the final prayer of the day. The air feels heavier now, steeped in the day's worth of candles. A haze of smoke clings low in the rafters, softening the stone arches into blurred outlines. You take a bite and the salt pricks your tongue. It is not luxury, but it is something. And in the silence of the hall, you give it more reverence than you might a feast elsewhere. The spoon comes next, ladling a thin porridge into your bowl. It steams faintly, its scent a blend of grains boiled long past recognition. You lift it to your mouth, warmth filling you even as the taste offers little more than neutrality. It is food as fuel, a reminder that monks ate to live, not live to eat. You inhale, and the tallow leaves a faint scratch in your throat, as though even the air has decided it's time for bed. You kneel with the others, the stone floor cool and unyielding beneath your knees. The hard edge presses through your robe, a quiet reminder that comfort is not part of the rule. You fold your hands, lower your head, and join the slow current of chanting voices. The words come like waves, steady, repetitive, almost hypnotic. Each verse blends into the next until you are unsure where one ends and the other begins. Your eyes are heavy. The Latin slips from your tongue in practiced rhythm, but your mind drifts toward the edges of sleep. You pinch your sleeve discreetly, letting the coarse wool sting your fingertips. It is just enough to keep your focus, though your body longs to slump forward and give in. You think of Brother John again, his punishment for nodding off still fresh in everyone's whispers. You straighten your back, deciding your dignity is worth a little pain. A moth flutters near the altar, its wings flickering in and out of the candlelight. It circles dangerously close to the open manuscript on the stand. You hold your breath as it dips lower, imagining the chaos. If one delicate wing smeared wet ink across the sacred page. It veers away at the last moment, leaving behind only the faint tickle of its passing shadow. Your throat is dry from the day's chanting. Each syllable rasps, a reminder of how often these prayers mark the hours. 7 times a day, every day. No absences, no excuses. It is devotion measured in repetition, a life divided into hymns and silences. You wonder briefly if heaven truly requires so much punctual attendance, then swallow the thought before it dares take shape. The chant draws to its end. Dot. The voices fade, leaving a hush that feels thick with exhaustion. The prior raises his hand, his face lined in the shifting glow of the candles. A final blessing. Dot. The brothers bow together, and the scrape of benches fills the stillness. As you rise, Dot, the chapel door opens to the night. Dot. Cool air brushes your face, sweet and clean compared to the smoke within. Dot. Stars glitter faintly above the cloister, and the stones beneath your feet breathe out the day's stored warmth. Dot. It feels like a world apart from the dense hush inside. You breathe deeply, grateful for the taste of untainted air. The procession moves slowly back toward the dormitory. Dot's sandals scuff against the stone. Robes whisper softly in rhythm. Dot. There are no words exchanged. Silence is the final act of the day. Dot. Your body longs for the straw pallet waiting in your cell, scratchy though it is, and the rough blanket that promises at least a little warmth. Dot. Tonight, there will be no more bells, no more chanting, no more sharp stings of wool against your hands. Only the promise of rest, fragile and fleeting though it may be. Dot. And with each step, you feel yourself surrendering to that thought. Dot. And so, with the smoke of candles still clinging to your robe and the cool night pressing against your skin, you walk back to your cell, to stretch out on straw once more, and let the day's final silence fold over you. You enter your cell, the familiar scent of straw and wool greeting you like a stubborn old friend. The room is dim, lit only by the faint spill of starlight through the shutter. Dot. The air is cool, edged with the night's dampness, and for the first time all day you allow yourself to exhale without haste. Dot. You lower yourself onto the pallet. Dot. The straw crackles beneath you, uneven and lumpy, as though conspiring to prod you into prayer even in your sleep. Dot. The wool blanket scratches against your skin, but you pull it close anyway, grateful for the warmth it grudgingly provides. The sounds of other brothers settling into their own cells drift faintly through the walls, a cough here, a sigh there, the soft rustle of bodies shifting on their own straw beds. Dot. Your muscles ache from the day's rhythm, the kneeling, the standing, the hours bent over parchment. Dot. It is a dull ache, not sharp, the kind that reminds you that the body keeps careful score of every task. Dot. You stretch your fingers, still stiff from clutching the quill, and imagine them ink-stained even in dreams. On the desk beside your bed lies a half-finished page. Dot. To system, the black letters march steadily, their edges crisp against the pale parchment. Dot. In the margin, a small note scrawled in Latin, perhaps by a previous scribe. O Lord, my back aches. Dot. You smile faintly at the thought. Dot. It seems complaints, like prayers, were written down for posterity. A reality check. Death is never far from these walls. Dot. Plague, hunger, the simple wear of years. All are frequent visitors to monastic life. Your stomach does not protest. Dot. It accepts the offering with humble gratitude. Dot. The silence remains, broken only by the steady voice of the lector. Dot. Another reading, another steady stream of scripture. Dot. The words fall like soft rain, dampening the room with their rhythm. Dot. You chew, you swallow, your ears catching phrases of prophets and psalms, while your mind quietly wonders whether anyone ever dreamt of stew thick with meat. A reality check. Meals were not occasions for talk, and yet scribes often slipped notes about such things into the margins of holy books, scribbling reminders of storms, illnesses, or personal grumbles. Dot. You realize that if you were to leave a legacy here, it might not be a shining psalter, but a note about fleas in your straw. Dot. The blanket grows warmer as you curl into it. Dot. The wool smells faintly of sheep and smoke, a scent that clings no matter how often it is aired. It is scratchy, but the weight is comforting, pressing down just enough to ease you toward stillness. Dot. You close your eyes, letting the darkness settle gently around you. Hey, you. Dot. Your thoughts drift to the day just lived, Dot, the bells, the chants, the bread, the ink-stained fingers, and the cold basin of water. Dot. Each moment feels small when taken alone, yet together they weave a pattern, a rhythm that binds the hours into something resembling meaning. You wonder if centuries from now someone might look at your work and see not words, but the quiet persistence behind them. Dot. The sounds of the dormitory fade slowly. Dot. The coughs grow rarer, the sighs deeper. Dot, somewhere nearby, a brother begins to snore, a low and steady rumble that blends into the night. Dot. You let it become background, a reminder that you are not alone, that the rhythm of sleep binds you just as surely as the rhythm of prayer. Dot. Your eyelids grow heavy. The stars outside blink faintly through the shutter, a handful of cold sparks in the endless dark. Dot. You breathe slowly, each exhale carrying away a fragment of the day's weariness. Dot. The straw pricks at your side, but it is softened by the comfort of surrender. Dot. And so, with your body wrapped in scratchy wool and your thoughts drifting toward eternity, you slip toward sleep, the kind of rest that carries you, at least for a few hours, until the next bell calls you back again. You lie in the dark, drifting at last toward stillness. Dot. The blanket is rough against your cheek, but its weight is steady, grounding you in the quiet. Dot. The straw beneath you rustles whenever you shift, its sharp edges poking, reminding you of its presence. Dot. And yet, for all its discomforts, the pallet is the one place in the monastery that feels wholly your own. Dot. Sleep comes slowly. Dot. The air is cool and damp, carrying a faint smell of earth from the cloister garden. A breeze slides in through the shutter's cracks, rattling faintly, as if whispering to you. Dot. You tuck the blanket tighter, curling into the smallest shape you can, and surrender to the rhythm of your own breathing. Dot. It is here, on the edge of sleep, that thoughts of legacy surface. Dot. You imagine the page you worked on today, its black letters steady, its golden flourishes glinting when the light touched them. Dot. Perhaps it will outlast you. Perhaps someone, centuries from now, will run their fingers across the parchment and wonder about the weary monk who once bent over it. Dot. But you also know how fragile such legacies are. A rat might gnaw at the edge. Dot. Moisture might blur the ink. A careless fire might erase hours, years, lifetimes of labor. Dot. And so, you temper your hopes. Dot. You tell yourself that your true mark is not in gold leaf or fine letters, but in the simple persistence of showing up day after day to serve in silence. A reality check drifts in. Your life's work today amounts to one page, perhaps even less, if the ink blotted or the parchment tore. A single smudged line in a psalter, read only by a handful of eyes, and possibly skipped over entirely if Brother Stephen finds your cue unsightly. Dot. It is humbling, if not slightly disheartening. Dot. Still, humility is supposed to be a virtue here, and you suspect you have acquired plenty of it. You think of the marginal notes left by scribes before you, complaints of cold, of hunger, of aching backs and tired eyes. A strange chorus across time, their small grumbles echoing yours. Dot. It comforts you to know that even in devotion, there was room for very human sighs. Dot. Your eyelids grow heavier now. Dot. The sounds of the dormitory fade into soft breathing, a chorus of men surrendered to the night. The straw prickles less sharply as your body relaxes. The blanket warms where it once itched, and the cool air feels like a balm instead of a burden. Dot. The final thought drifts through your mind like a candle guttering low, that tomorrow will come as today has, with bells, chants, bread, ink, and silence. Dot. And though you may never be remembered, the rhythm itself will carry on, a pattern of life etched into stone walls and parchment alike. Silence was a discipline as important as fasting. Dot. To speak was to break the rhythm, to turn attention from the sacred to the mundane. And so you eat wordlessly, listening to your spoon scrape your bowl, hoping it does not sound too loud in the hush. You glance at your brothers. Their heads are bent, faces calm, hands moving steadily between bowl and mouth. There is no complaint here, only a quiet acceptance of sameness. And so, with the stars fading behind the shutter and your breath evening into slumber, you let yourself go at last. To sleep, to silence, to the brief mercy of rest before another day begins. End of script. Sweet dreams. Still, you cannot help but imagine that somewhere, a tavern table groans with roasted meats and laughter, and for a fleeting moment you wonder what it would be like to sit there instead. When the reading ends, so too does the meal. The prior gives a blessing, and the brothers rise together, bowls gathered and cleared. The hall empties quickly, the air left behind heavy with the sense of bread crust and melted cheese. Your hunger is not entirely gone, but it is muted, smoothed down into something you can carry with you. Outside, the last of the daylight fades. The cloister stones are cool beneath your feet. Your body longs for water, not to drink, but to wash. For before the night prayers you must tend to cleanliness, such as it is, in this place of cold water and rough hands. And so, with bread sitting heavily in your stomach and the sound of scripture still echoing in your ears, you walk toward the wash basin, where the peculiar rituals of medieval hygiene await. You follow the corridor to the washing place, a simple stone basin fed by a narrow channel of water. It gurgles faintly, a thin stream trickling from a spout shaped like a lion's head, its teeth worn smooth by centuries of flow. The water is cold, always cold, and it carries the mineral tang of earth and stone. This is not bathing as you might imagine it. This is rinsing, quick and perfunctory. You dip your hands into the stream. The chill bites instantly, your fingers turning red as you rub them together. There is no soap here, only water and the rough insistence of friction. A few herbs might be tossed in on feast days, rosemary, sage, but today the water is plain and your skin tingles from the shock.